I worked the graveyard shift at an all-night diner, the kind of place where time felt like it stretched thin and reality started to fray at the edges. Most nights were a blur of truck drivers and lost souls, but one particular regular always stood out. He'd arrive around 3 a.m., always the same booth in the back, always alone. He never ordered food, just a glass of water, which he'd never touch. He was a quiet man, middle-aged, with tired eyes that seemed to hold a world of unspoken stories. He'd sit there for an hour, sometimes two, just watching the front door, or perhaps nothing at all. He'd leave without a word, slipping out as silently as he arrived. But he always left a tip. The first time, it was a perfectly folded $100 bill. I thought it was a mistake, but he was gone. The next week, it was another C-note, placed under the untouched water glass. This went on for months. I tried to talk to him, to ask if everything was all right. But he'd only offer a slow, almost imperceptible shake of his head. He never looked at me directly, always past me, as if searching for something beyond my shoulder. Then, one Tuesday, I found something different under the glass. It wasn't money. It was a small, ornate silver locket, the kind you might put a tiny photo inside. My fingers trembled as I opened it. Inside, pressed flat and faded, was a fragment of an old newspaper clipping. It was a missing persons report from decades ago. The photo on the clipping was grainy, but undeniably, horrifically, it was the man who sat in the booth. I looked up, my blood running cold. The booth was empty. He'd been there moments before. I ran to the window, peering out into the pre-dawn gloom. There was no car, no shadow of a figure disappearing into the darkness. Just the highway, stretching endlessly, and the chilling realization that my regular customer hadn't been waiting for someone to arrive. He'd been waiting for himself to finally leave. I landed a job at the Gilded Fork, a place that prided itself on its tradition, and more specifically, its chef, an ancient man named Enzo. His reputation for his signature dish, Enzo's secret ragu, was legendary. The restaurant had been in his family for generations, and he was the last of his line, fiercely protective of his recipes. Enzo was a peculiar man. He rarely left the kitchen, communicating mostly through grunts and hand gestures. He had an unusual intensity in his eyes, especially when discussing the ragu. Freshness, he'd declare, is paramount. It's what gives it life. The smell of that ragu was unique, earthy, rich, with an almost metallic tang that was hard to place. It was delicious, yes, but undeniably unsettling. One evening, a delivery of fresh ingredients was late, and Enzo was beside himself. He insisted on preparing a new batch of the ragu himself, from scratch, for an important reservation. He sent everyone home, saying he preferred to work alone. I stayed late to finish some paperwork. Around midnight, the rhythmic thudding started from the kitchen. A dull, heavy sound, like something being repeatedly dropped onto a wooden block. It was too soft to be chopping vegetables, too irregular to be anything mechanical. Curiosity, or perhaps a deep, primal fear, pulled me towards the kitchen door. It was slightly ajar. Through the crack, I saw Enzo, his back to me. He was hunched over a large wooden butcher block, his arm moving in a steady, deliberate rhythm. The thudding continued. On the counter beside him, bathed in the dim overhead light, was a gleaming, sharp cleaver, and next to that, a small silver bracelet, a child's bracelet, intricately engraved. My breath caught in my throat. The smell of the ragu, usually confined to the kitchen, now seemed to fill the entire restaurant, that unsettling metallic tang stronger than ever. Enzo paused, his head tilting slightly as if listening. He slowly reached out, picked up the bracelet, and without turning, gently placed it into a deep, bubbling pot on the stove. The thudding stopped. I backed away silently, my heart hammering, the taste of that fresh ragu suddenly bitter and chilling in my mouth. It was nearly closing time at Burger Blast, and I was on the late shift, manning the drive-thru. Rain was coming down in sheets, and the parking lot was deserted. Just me, the flickering fluorescent lights, and the hum of the fryers. Then, the familiar chime rang out. A car had pulled up to the speaker. "Welcome to Burger Blast. How can I help you?" I said, my voice flat with exhaustion. A moment of silence, then a voice, raspy and barely audible, cut through the static. I need the special." "Which special is that, sir?" I asked, checking the menu board. "We didn't have a special at this hour." The quiet special," the voice whispered. It sounded strained, as if the speaker was in immense pain or struggling to breathe. My stomach knotted. "Sir, I'm not sure what you mean. We have combos, burgers, chicken." "No," the voice interrupted, sharper this time, though still a whisper. "Just quiet. Please, make it quiet." A cold dread crept up my spine. There was no car visible in my monitor, just the rain. I leaned forward, pressing the mic button again. "Sir, can you please pull up to the window so I can see you?" Another long pause, punctuated by the faint sound of what almost sounded like muffled sobbing. Then, the voice returned, closer now, as if right outside the window, though no car was there. "It's inside. It's always inside." The speaker crackled violently, and then went dead. The chime sounded again, signaling the car had left. I stood frozen, heart pounding, straining to see through the rain-streaked window. Nothing. No tail lights, no sound of an engine receding, just the relentless drumming of rain. I tried to rationalize it, a prank, a faulty speaker, but the feeling of icy fingers tracing my neck wouldn't go away. Suddenly, a faint, desperate whisper came from behind me, from the empty restaurant itself, a mere breath away. "Make it quiet." I whirled around, seeing nothing but my own reflection in the darkened kitchen window, my face pale with terror. The sound of muffled sobbing, exactly as I'd heard through the speaker, now seemed to emanate from the very walls surrounding me. It wasn't an order for food, it was a plea, and I was the only one left to hear it. I worked as a maitre d' at the Obsidian Plate, a Michelin-starred restaurant renowned for its exclusivity. Every night, without fail, Table 7 in the far, secluded corner was reserved. Always for one. And always, the name on the reservation was simply Mr. Blackwood. The odd thing was, Mr. Blackwood never appeared. Or rather, he never appeared to appear. The table would be set meticulously, just like any other, complete with crystal, silver, and a single unlit candle. But when I'd checked the reservation sheet an hour into service, the name Mr. Blackwood would be crossed off, marked as attended. No one ever saw him arrive or leave. The servers assigned to that section swore the table remained empty, the candle unlit, the napkin untouched. One evening, as I was overseeing the early rush, a new busboy, fresh out of culinary school, approached me, visibly agitated. "Sir," he whispered, "Table 7, the breadbasket is empty, and the water glass, it's half full, but there's no one there." I dismissed it as nerves, explaining the Mr. Blackwood anomaly, telling him to simply refill it. He looked at me with wide, terrified eyes. "But it's still cold, sir. The glass, like someone just set it down." That night, after the last patron had left and the cleaning crew had gone, I found myself drawn to table 7. The linen was pristine. The silverware gleamed. But as I leaned closer, I noticed something. On the untouched white napkin, a faint, almost invisible indentation, like the imprint of a small, delicate hand. And on the polished table surface, just beside where a plate would sit, a single, tiny, almost imperceptible scratch. It looked like someone had been tracing a letter over and over again. I bent down, my heart pounding. The scratch formed a perfect, repeated H. Then I realized the chair wasn't just angled away from the room. It was turned, ever so slightly, towards the grand, ornate mirror on the wall, as if someone had been sitting there, not observing the dining room, but gazing intently at their own reflection. And as I stared at my own face, reflected in the glass, a faint, cold breath ghosted across the back of my neck. The reservation wasn't for Mr. Blackwood to dine. It was for Mr. Blackwood to be watched. And tonight, I was sitting in his seat.